in resting as the awareness that is the source of the pure phenomena of each thought, then it becomes more and more obvious that awareness is the ultimate meaning and the ultimate aspect of the thought. Otherwise, we'll get lost in the label. Each thought has two aspects, the label, whatever we've been using to describe it, and this ultimate essence that is the entirety of its basic space. In understanding the personal identity as insubstantial in its own right, in other words, it has no own being. It has no self-essence. It has no self-origination. In understanding this so conclusively about the personal identity, it's easier for us to rest as awareness and not hold on to or try to keep a personal identity. As stated, a personal identity only seems to be thought by thought. When thought by thought, we make the most important choice to rest as the awareness that is the basis or essence of all thoughts, then the reality of our true being, the ease of our true being, becomes more and more obvious. Now, what about all these labels? We've looked at the personal identity a little bit, and we've concluded that the personal identity has no self-origination, no self-essence, no own being. What about all the other labels that are subsequent to this label, this point of view of the personal identity? All the other labels are equal to the personal identity label or point of view. So all points of view are included within this all-encompassing pure view of awareness. And all the points of view, whether it's a personal identity or any of the other labels or points of view we're applying to the point of view of a personal identity, all these are absolutely equal in being the pure phenomena of the originally pure basic space of awareness. When we look into all the other labels that we apply to ourselves, all the thoughts, emotions, and experiences we have, we need to know what those labels apply to and how we can find the essence of what those labels apply to. So let's take something like our head, or the mountain out there. When we look at our head, what can we definitively say about our head? Where is the headness of the head located in the head? Is the headness of the head located in the skin covering the head? No, we can't really say we can find headness there. And what about the structure, the bone structure inside the head? Is headness located in that bone structure? And what about inside the bone structure, the brain and such? Can we find headness in the brain anywhere? Is it located anywhere there? And what if we look even closer and we look at the blood vessels inside the head? Can we find headness in the blood vessels? No, we can't really find headness there either. And what if we put the head under an electron microscope? Are we going to find the headness of the head and the electrons that are the particles that make up the head? No, we can't find headness there either. And then if we put the head in a particle accelerator and we see that there's nothing there but space, what have we found out about the headness of the head? It's comprised of pure space. It's comprised of pure space. It's comprised of aware pure space. It's never been made into anything called a head. Even if we take all the composite particles of the head and put them in the linear accelerator, we still can't find the headness of the head, even in all the composite particles. And such is the case with all labels, no matter what they are. We can go through the process of the same process I just described with any word or label. We can apply it to the mountain or the tiger or the elephant or our emotions or our thoughts or anything at all. Through this simple process of understanding, we can come to a definitive conclusion that no label, no matter what it is, has a self-essence or self-identity. Then we can ask ourselves, well, what about all my experiences that I have, my sensations that occur through the eye and the ears and all the other senses? Okay, then let's look a little bit at these labels, the eyes, called the eyes and the ears, and ask ourselves, well, what is it really that sees and what is it that hears? We'll just look at those two senses rather than going into all of them. When we ask ourselves what sees, many of us have learned that it's our eyes that sees. And through a biological process involving the eyeballs and the optic nerve and the brain, then we see. So, where exactly does seeing occur in any of that I've just described that we learn that we are? Does seeing occur in anywhere in the eyeball? Does it occur in the retina? Does it occur in the pupil? Does it occur in the iris? Can we really say that seeing occurs in the optic nerve? Can we really say that seeing occurs in the brain? And can we say that it occurs in a composite of all of these? If you still think seeing occurs there, then what sees when you're asleep at night in a dream? So you see, when we look into all these things that we've taken to be so solid and so stable, it's easier to see that what sees is beyond the eye. It's beyond the biological mechanism. It's beyond what's going on with the body and its senses. When we're asleep at night and our eyes are completely closed, we have all kinds of things occur in the dream. And what is it that is the doing of the dreaming, the doing of the waking, and the doing of the sleeping equally? It's awareness. The doing of seeing is awareness. All seeing occurs due to awareness and nothing else. And the same with the ears. What is it that hears? Where exactly is hearing occurring? Is it occurring in the skin of the ear? Is it occurring in the cartilage of the ear? Is it occurring in the blood vessels and corpuscles of the ear? Is it occurring in the auditory canal or in the eardrum? And if you still think that hearing is occurring there and with the process in the brain, then what hears when you're sound asleep at night? When none of the sensory mechanisms that you've taken to be the doer are alive and active. What hears in that dream? Is it the ear and all its processes that's hearing all of the dream images and the fantastic events that are going on that are completely beyond anything that could ever be imagined? So in this way, we can come to a conclusive understanding both about personal identity and the labels that we use to describe the fearful consequences associated with having a personal identity. Because once we decide we have a personal identity, we have all kinds of fearful consequences associated with being that personal identity. If we are thinking that a personal identity is holdable and keepable in some way, then we immediately establish personal consequences, and many of them are very fearful. So we get lost in a lifestyle of hope and fear, of hoping that certain things will happen and fearing that they won't, or fearing that certain things will happen and hoping that they won't. So it's very important to come to a conclusive understanding about the insubstantiality of all points of view, the insubstantiality of all labels, whether it's the personal identity point of view or any other label. All of these, no matter what they are, cannot be found to have a self-essence. No label, no point of view can be found to have its own being, its own entity. It is not a thing in and of itself that can somehow control other things. And this is very important for us to understand, because sometimes we have hugely disturbing emotions that arise. And these hugely disturbing emotions are something that we have learned affect us in some way, that they can, in fact, disturb us. We've learned that that is the case. And through repetition of that over and over and over again, we impulsively act on disturbing states within us and engage in all kinds of actions based on those disturbing states, whatever they are. When those disturbing states come up and we rest as awareness that is the basis of those disturbing states, whether they're thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, when we rest, even though everything is screaming, I'm not resting, when we just rest with no need to describe anything that's occurring, with no need to seek anything in a label, then more and more we become familiar with the wisdom at the basis of all appearances. And less do we feel taken out of the vitality of life by appearances. We've only learned that all appearances are something in and of themselves. That is something that is a learned habit, and that is it. It has no substance in its own right. And just as we acknowledged over and over again through repetition that we are a personal identity and that our thoughts, emotions, and experiences can bring either hopeful or fearful consequences, when we acknowledge awareness over and over again, the awareness at the basis, that becomes obvious, just as it's become seemingly dormant through reinforcing that we have a personal identity with hopeful and fearful consequences. This is very important to understand. When we take ourselves to be a personal identity and then we want to find out about the true nature of our being, very often our starting point is, well, there's something wrong with this personal identity. It's flawed, and I need to get rid of that flawed person that I am. But as stainless awareness is flawless from the beginningless beginning, there's never been anything within awareness that has been flawed. So to try to tweak and fiddle around with and transform and analyze something that doesn't exist, a personal identity, all we do is perpetuate the idea of a personal identity over and over and over again.